episode number 14. You are listening to the More Than a Lawyer podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help lawyers and mums to thrive in their careers and motherhood. I share tips, strategies, and inspirational conversation with awesome women to help you reduce the struggle in your juggle. Hello and welcome to the show. I am really excited about jumping into today's episode. I am speaking to Autumn Witt Boyd, and she is a lawyer for creative entrepreneurs, and she is sharing with us her journey from being in private practice to setting up her own firm after becoming a mother. When she couldn't find a job that would allow her the flexibility that she wanted and she needed, she decided to go out on her own. So if you have ever wondered what it would be like to work for yourself, to set up your own law firm, then you really need to listen to this episode. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
Hi Autumn, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for being here. It would be great if you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Janine. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Autumn Witt Boyd. I'm an attorney. I live in Tennessee in the United States. I've been an attorney for about 12 years now, and I went out on my own and started a solo practice a little less than 2 years ago. And now I work mostly with what I call creative entrepreneurs. It's like bloggers, online business owners, graphic designers, wedding planners. It's like this whole big group of really interesting people, all doing creative things.
Oh, that sounds so awesome. There's so much I want to ask you about. So firstly, tell me about your journey prior to starting your firm, because you said you've been practicing on your own for 2 years now. So what was life like before? What was your practice like?
So I started out right out of law school. I took a job with a judge, which is called a clerkship here in the U.S. And you're basically like his right-hand person. So I did all the research and I would draft like first drafts of opinions for him, help him in trials. And so I learned a ton. I thought I wanted to be a litigator. So that was great training for that because you really got to see kind of behind the scenes. He was a trial judge. So I did that for 2 years. It was like a dream job out of law school. And then I took the pretty normal path. I went to a medium-sized law firm, about 70 or 80 attorneys here in Chattanooga, and worked there for a little less than 2 years, doing all kinds of just kind of general business litigation. And I always had been interested in like copyright and trademark work, but there wasn't a lot of it here in Chattanooga. And where I went to law school in Nashville, there's the country music industry. So I thought about going back there, but had really fallen in love with Chattanooga. So I reached a bit of a crossroads. And I had actually kind of a client. We were local counsel for this law firm that was based in Colorado, which is quite far away from Tennessee. But I was kind of the lawyer on the ground and helping them with that case. And when that case wrapped up, it was a copyright infringement case. And that's all they did. So they asked me if I'd be interested in coming to work for them.
Wow.
And so since there wasn't a lot of that work here otherwise, it was a great opportunity that really just kind of fell into my lap. So they were open to me telecommuting, so I didn't have to move to Colorado.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that was awesome. Yeah. So I switched jobs. And that was, I think when I joined them, there were 2 partners and 1 other associate. So tiny, tiny little boutique firm. Okay. And everyone was virtual. So it was a huge change.
A whole different way of working.
Yeah. And I really did. I worked in my PJs almost every day. Just from a home office, which was awesome.
I got the opportunity to work from home a lot when I worked for the Insolvency Service, which is a government agency over here, and we could sometimes work from home. And so I would just be in my PJs doing my cases and doing my summaries and stuff, and it was like, this is different.
It was awesome. And some people, like I had a lot of friends who were like, I could never do that. I could never be disciplined enough. But I had an office like I do now, and same furniture actually. And I would come into my office every day and turn on my light and turn on my computer. So I didn't really have trouble being distracted. It was, I treated it like a real job because it was. Yeah. It was really busy. And so I stayed at that job for almost 7 years, and it was really great. I got more responsibility. We ended up, most of the cases settled, but it was, it was complex litigation. It was drafting motions and going to court, and it was a fair amount of travel because none of our cases were actually in Chattanooga.
Okay.
So I would have to travel to New York or other places where we had cases. So towards the end of my time there, the travel had really ramped up, and I have young children and a husband now.
Yeah.
So that just became harder and harder to juggle everything. And my boys were getting older. And so honestly, when they were littler, it was easier because they didn't really notice that I was gone.
Yeah.
My husband certainly did.
The big boy
kids didn't. Yeah, the kids didn't mind so much. But yeah, as they were getting older, it just all became harder. So I made the decision to leave that firm and go out on my own at that point.
So tell me a bit about the kind of transition to motherhood, because a lot of our listeners are lawyers and other professional women who are going from just doing that to then being mums and having to figure out how to marry the two and integrate those two tracks in life. So how did you find that when you actually had your sons? Because you have twins, right?
I have twin boys, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I love twins. I'm just obsessed with people that have twins. But yeah, so tell us a bit more about that.
So I had them in 2011, and I was really lucky. I had a very easy pregnancy, and working from home, just that whole process was really great. I couldn't have asked for a better time. And the travel at that point was not so bad. So I was not traveling much during that pregnancy. But as it turned out, just before I got pregnant, like maybe 6 months before I got pregnant, my husband, had started his own company. Okay. So he is a construction consultant. He does like estimating for general contractors and architects, and he works with all different people in the industry. But he had just started that company, and I mean, he was making $0. Like, it really was. He started it from the ground up. And so at that time, I was really the sole breadwinner. And we had some savings, but, there wasn't really a choice for me not to go back to work. Mm-hmm. It was, I was going to go back to work, and I was going to go back to work full steam.
Wow. Okay.
So it was, honestly, I have to say, like, I felt zero guilt about going back to work after I had the boys, because it was like, this is how we're paying the bills. This is just what we have to do. Mm-hmm. And I really liked my job. So, I really it was kind of putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky my mom moved here. She lived at the other end of the state, which was about a 5-hour drive. So quite far. Yeah.
Yeah. That is quite far, because I always think that people that have twins just need extra help. You need an extra pair of hands, because there's two babies to deal with at all times. And I just wonder how it works.
Yeah. So she moved here to help, which was such a blessing. And I don't think we could have made it through that first year, which was really hard without her. And the boys, they went to daycare, which was awesome. I am a huge proponent of daycare, but they got sick all the time that first year. And then we would get sick. And so it would just like go through the whole family.
It's either sick or teething or just growth
not sleeping.
Spurts. Yeah.
Yeah. So that first year was just absolutely brutal. I mean, I look back and I'm like, I don't know how we survived, but we did. We just kept going because you have to. But yeah, having my mom here in town was a huge support. And my husband's family lives about 30 minutes away.
Okay, that's great.
So that they were hugely helpful too. So we were really like had the best possible situation.
Yeah, I always say that it's important to build a network. So even if you don't have family close together, it's finding those people that you can lean on, if it's a friend or if it's a family friend or someone else who you wouldn't mind leaving the kids with, or who would come and help you to get things done. It's just really important to have that network, I think.
Yeah, well, I feel like some of the teachers who work at my boys' daycare have become like family. And so like we were renovating our house at one point. We were moving from a rental house back. And so we had one of the teachers come and keep the boys like all day. Yeah, because we were just like, we can't do this with toddlers running around. It just wasn't possible. So yeah, it's totally true. Your support network is key.
Yeah, definitely.
To being able to keep all the balls in the air.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did it work then for you to say, okay, right, I'm going to start my own firm, given that your husband had recently started a new business? And then how did that whole thought process work for you?
It was slow. It was a slow process. So he actually his income had eclipsed mine with his business. So that was helpful to see that, okay, we can pay the bills now from his if I need to take some time to get up and going. And honestly, we had a trial with my old firm, which was in Philadelphia, which is quite far from where we live. And so I was gone for 4 weeks in a row, and I came home every
Oh,
weekend.
I was just like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then all the prep too, because we were still a tiny firm. So I had a paralegal, but it was really me and the one partner doing all the work to get ready for trial. So it was just bananas for months on end. And I remember I went out to dinner with my husband one night, and he looked at me, and it was just basically like a "we can't live this way" conversation,
Oh.
where I was working till 2 and 3 a.m., like at least once a week, sometimes more than once a week, a lot of working weekends. And it was just, I was miserable, but I didn't realize I was making everyone around me miserable.
Right.
So he just kind of put that bug in my ear and was like, you don't have to do it today, but we've got to make a change. And if the law firm where you're working now can't make that change, then we're going to have to look at something else.
Yeah.
So I took a couple months really. And because I still was that was before the trial. So I was still kind of in the thick of it. So I was just like, okay, I just need to get past this trial because I didn't want to leave that law firm hanging.
Yes.
And I had never I was basically, second chair for the trial. I'd never had that much responsibility. So I really wanted that, I wanted to finish that project.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience, even though it was terrible. It's a pretty miserable experience to go through a trial. But yeah, so after the trial finished, we took a vacation, and I literally spent that whole week just kind of thinking and Googling and looking at what other jobs might be out there. And we did a lot of talking. I talked to a lot of friends and just kind of brainstormed and finally figured out there wasn't really another job that I wanted that would give me the flexibility that I had.
Yeah.
Because the nice thing with the telecommuting was I had a ton of autonomy and control over my own schedule. And so going back to the law firm or going in-house in a more traditional sense was going to be really hard to keep that. So I had been totally spoiled that job, even though I was working a lot. It was a really great setup. So after kind of looking around, I decided that the only thing I could do that would really meet our needs was to go out on my own.
Yeah.
So it was terrifying. I'm super risk averse. So
most lawyers are. Just like, I can't take that risk.
Yeah. And I think if I hadn't seen my husband build his business from the ground up, it would have been a lot scarier. But he was so supportive and just kept saying, like, you're a lawyer. People know what you do. You have a degree. Like he was in this weird like consulting role where he was trying to sell his services to people who didn't even know they needed them. He's like, people know they need you. You're going to have a much easier time.
Yeah. I totally, when you were just talking then about the late nights and just preparing, I trained as a corporate lawyer. So that was my life, just working on mergers and acquisitions and being in the thick of a transaction. And when you're in the thick of it, it's, you get the adrenaline rush and that everyone's relying on you to get things done. So you just do it and you carry on and you plow through. And then you get to the end.
Put your head down.
Yeah, you get your head down and you get it done. And you get to the end and it's like 3 a.m. completion meeting and you're like, okay, yes, we're done. And then you're like, okay, now my body needs to break down.
Right.
and now I need to go
pick up all the pieces of my life that I've been ignoring.
Exactly. Go and speak to my husband again and maybe go out with some friends or return their phone calls.
Yeah. I mean, I had stopped exercising, which I really enjoy. Like, that's one of my favorite things to do. I wasn't eating well, all the things. I was yelling at my children.
Yeah.
It's
hard, especially when you have children. Because I found after I got pregnant, and then before I got pregnant, actually, I thought, okay, I'll just have the baby and then I'll organise childcare and I'll go back to work after maternity leave. And then he came and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to be working until 3 a.m. and not be around to see him and stuff. So then it was similar to you, just thinking, what are the alternatives in terms of of work? And I think for a lot of people, they can't necessarily see the alternatives when they're in it. It just feels like, okay, well, this is my area that I'm trained in, so this is what I must do. But as you said, going through that process of taking a step back, taking yourself out of the environment that you're normally in, speaking to other people and just working through, what is it that I actually want is like a really, really important step to take when you're figuring out finding something that works better for you.
Yeah, and we're so lucky to live now in an age where, my last job was telecommuting, so I knew a little bit about working virtually. And now a
Yeah.
lot of my clients are not here in town, so I still kind of work virtually, and it makes life so much easier.
Yeah, and it's good as well to know that you don't necessarily have to leave the law, because I think when people
Yeah.
look at their role, they say, well, I can't find anything that's going to fit, so I have to do something completely different. And that's not always the case. It may be that you want to, but it's not always that you have to
Yeah.
completely leave the law. You can just, like you've done, just figure out a way to make it work for you,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. And
awesome.
one other change that I made, which was a little terrifying, was I switched my practice totally. So I went from being a litigator to doing the transactional, more corporate work.
Yeah.
Um,
How did you find that shift? Did you feel like you needed to just skill up and learn everything there was to learn, or
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
especially
Well,
starting on your own?
yeah, I think there were two things. So one, like, I think I didn't realize how much of what I knew from being a litigator would translate.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, I had drafted settlement agreements. Like, a contract is a contract,
Hmm.
even though that wasn't what I spent most of my days doing, I knew how a contract worked. And so that definitely translates. But the other thing is, I think people trust you. People trust lawyers that you'll figure it out, even if you've never done
Yes,
something before. Um,
absolutely.
that half of your skill set is like being able to find out how to do things and research and learn.
Yeah.
And I saw it when I worked for the judge, and now I see it again, now that I'm working on my own with all kinds of different lawyers, is that a lot of people know less than I do.
Yeah.
And they're just doing it the best they can. And, we all are learning as we go, and
Yeah.
that was certainly true even when I was a litigator. If I would have a client with a different kind of business model or, a different area of the law, you're not always doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah. So you're always learning until you've
Yeah.
been in practice for like years and years and years.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Even then, you're still learning when there's a new case and there's a new angle.
Right.
I
Right.
moved from working as a corporate lawyer in private practice to in-house, and so when you work in-house, it's very much, so many different types of things can pass your
Right.
desk. And so when I first started working, people would say, "Oh, Janine, can you just draft this letter, bringing a claim against somebody, and we need to write a letter before action." And I'm like, sure. Okay. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, my specialism's corporate. I normally deal with contracts. I haven't done one of these before. And then you just get to the point where you're like, okay, but I know how to figure it out. I can
Right.
find out,
Right.
and I
Exactly.
can work through logically what needs to go in here. So it's getting past that initial, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing, to actually, yes, I can figure it.
Yeah. Well, and I've been very deliberate about networking because as a solo attorney, like I don't have anybody down the hall that I can go knock on their door and ask a question.
Yes.
So I've kind of developed like every new solo attorney that I see on Facebook in a group, or like if I'm at an event here locally and, somebody who does something different than me, I always want to get to know them and, offer to be a resource for them,
Yeah.
because I kind of specialize in copyright and trademark law, and a lot of people don't have any experience there. And then they're usually really generous back.
Yeah.
So if I've got a quick question on something that's really complicated that I can't figure out on my own,
Yeah.
I have somewhere to go, which is really helpful.
That is a really, really good tip, even if you're not on your own, but you're, working within a firm or in a legal department, having go-to people that you can just call and say, can I just run this past you? It's just
Yeah.
really, really useful to have that. So that's definitely a good strategy. So what advice would you give to someone who's in the place where you were before, where you were like, this isn't working for me, like what do I do now, and feeling really overwhelmed by the whole thing? Do you have any tips that you would say, okay, the first thing I would do is this?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I did that was the most helpful was going on vacation, drinking a lot of wine. And I don't know if you've heard of Danielle Laporte.
Yes, I have heard of her.
Yeah, so she has this it's actually a workbook. Like you sit down and fill in the answers called the Desire Map.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about kind of asking yourself questions about how you want to feel and then taking action steps to change things in your life to basically get to those how you want to feel.
Yeah.
And so that working through that was the most helpful thing for me because I, like you said, had thought about like, do I want to leave law altogether and do something totally different? But working through that helped me see like things that were working, things that I did like in law, and that, I didn't have to leave. I just needed to change the way I was doing them and kind of the circumstances that I was working in.
Yeah.
and, the kinds of clients that I was working with and the kind of work I was doing. So that was hugely helpful, was like, and I think there's lots of ways you can do that. I mean, you can sit down and make a pro-con list. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a workbook, but yeah, like you said, kind of being able to take a step back a little bit. And it's hard when you're in the thick of things, like when you're in the middle of an acquisition or something, your head is down, like it's hard to get that perspective. But yeah, I think also it can help to talk with people who aren't in the law, who might, who are in business, or, even just family members or trusted confidants.
Yeah.
I think can be really helpful to help you kind of think through things with an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. When I work with clients sometimes, that I find that that's kind of the key thing to do at the beginning. So I help people to just see things from a different perspective, just by sometimes just asking a few questions and getting them to actually say, oh, yeah, actually, that doesn't have to be the way that it is. Or, oh, I didn't realize that was what was holding me back, or that was what was my main issue. So I definitely think taking some time away from the situation and stepping back.
Yeah. Well, and
working
with a coach like you, I think would be great too. And at that time, when I was going through all this transition, I had a small group of women friends. We were actually all working through that Desire Map book together.
Oh, that's
almost like a little book club.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we kind of coached each other. It was kind of like a little a little mastermind.
Like a mastermind. Yeah. I love masterminds. They're so useful.
And they are actually, now we all have our own businesses and we're all kind of in a mastermind together.
Oh, that's cool.
It's been great. Yeah. But yeah, having someone to just kind of talk with is so helpful.
And so I'm just curious. So for somebody who says, okay, I want to try going out on my own, how have you found marrying up the legal side with the business side? Because once you get into growing your business, it's a whole different world being an entrepreneur and learning about marketing and, like you said, networking. I guess you do that as a lawyer anyway, but it's a different way to network, and it's a different way mindset in terms of, I want to put myself out there so people can know what I can offer them and, bring them into to working with me. That's a bit different from just saying, okay, I have a contract to look at, or I have a case to prepare.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the first big investments that I made in my business was about maybe 8 or 10 months in. I realized where I was really having trouble was like that sales piece of the business. And, I was meeting a lot of people, but I was having trouble reaching the kinds of clients I wanted to work with.
Yeah.
And so I did an online course, like basically sales training, because my background in college was journalism and English. Like I have no business background at all.
Yeah.
So, just learning some of those fundamentals, that was, it's not hard. It's just a new skill set.
It's just a different way of thinking, isn't it?
Yeah. But, and it was funny because before I went out on my own, my husband, you kind of run the numbers because, like, oh, as a lawyer, I have this hourly billing rate. And so I should be just like swimming in money if I am, working even 10 or 20 hours a week. And you find out really quickly that there's so much time that goes into setting up the law practice and the systems and marketing and all of that, if I'm billing, like if I'm actually doing legal work half the time, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I am still on my own.
So it's being realistic in terms of the fact that you're not just going to be practicing if you're doing it on your own, because you have to be building the business. So when you think of sort of the partners in the law firms that are so busy, they do a little bit of law and they do a lot of admin. That's kind of what you end up doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think it's good for people to kind of think of it as even an option, because I guess a lot of people will think, I just need to stay in a firm or I need to go in-house. So having that option, like you could actually do that. You could actually go out on your own and set up your own thing. That's great to know.
And I think it's amazing now. Like I said, a lot of my clients I've met online, but I didn't take a single client from my old firm, and especially since I was transitioning into a totally new practice area. I didn't really have anything I wanted to take. but I was able to get up and running pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And part of that was just networking locally and telling everybody I knew what I was doing and basically saying, please hire me. Or if you know anyone who needs my services,
Yeah.
I am available.
So that's totally, stepping outside of your comfort zone and just being like,
Yeah.
okay, this isn't the most comfortable thing to do, but it's necessary right
Yeah.
now.
Well, and like I was really nervous about the marketing piece because in my last firm, we had such a niche. We were just doing copyright infringement litigation and we were working mostly with photographers and it was almost all just kind of referral based. So I wasn't doing any marketing for that. So I didn't know how or what, but it's just like going to coffee with people and telling them what you do.
Relationships, right? It's just meeting people and getting to know them and stuff.
Yeah. So. And, asking how you can help them with their business and, just being generous and open. And that's all it is. It's really not as scary as I thought it was going to be.
That's so good to know. So yeah, for those of you listening that are thinking about setting up on your own, it isn't that scary, or it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to find out a bit more about your family dynamic. So in terms of being a mom to 3, so you have your twins and then you have a daughter.
Yeah, I have a new baby.
Before. Oh, so how is that working? How has having a new baby and bringing her into the mix changed things in your family dynamic, or has it changed things?
Yeah.
Yeah, big time.
It definitely has. Yeah, but it's been awesome. And I have to say, like, not part of the reason why I left my last job and started on my own was to have a baby. But, I had always kind of wanted a third. And my husband was like, we are barely hanging on. Like, there's no way we can add another human being to this equation. But then after I'd been on my own, I don't know, maybe 6 or 9 months, we kind of reevaluated and life is so much calmer and being out of litigation too. I think that was part of the craziness, like with all the crazy deadlines.
Yeah.
And that was why I was working all crazy hours. It's like somebody files a motion and you have 5 days to respond and it doesn't matter what else you had planned to do during those 5 days. Having just a more low key practice now kind of opened up the space in our lives to think about having a third kid. And my big boys were about 4.5 when she came, and they spent the whole pregnancy just so excited. It was a really fun age to go through all of that. And I think they'll remember it. Like they loved like kissing my belly and they were so excited for her to get here. And now they just like are all up in her face all the time.
They like kissing her a lot. I find
when
you've got toddlers or really young children, they've got a baby, they just want to hold the baby. And you're like, oh, don't drop the baby. Okay. Yes. Okay. Enough kissing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they'll like kind of pull on her like a little bit too hard because they just want to like smother her with love.
Oh, it's so sweet.
It's been really fun. Yeah. And she now is in daycare. And the transition has been really easy. My mom was really sweet. And so I took 6 weeks totally off, which I planned and like told all of my clients that I wasn't going to be available. But I was kind of checking email. Mm-hmm. And I have an assistant now, a part-time assistant who I hired right before my maternity leave because I knew I would need some help. And so that was great. And she kind of managed my inbox and made sure that nothing fell through the cracks, but that I wasn't having to check it every single day. And then my mom kept the baby 2 days a week so that I could kind of ease back in. And that was really
awesome. Yay, mom.
She's really great. She even said to me recently, she was like, I miss my days with Vivian. Like, can I go pick her up from daycare?
Oh, that's so sweet.
I'm like, sure.
My mom's like that. She just, I literally had a text message from her yesterday. She said, she calls my son Bubbaloo. And she said, I haven't seen Bubbaloo for over a week and I'm going on holiday, so I need to see him this weekend. I'm like, okay, Mom. It's so sweet.
Yeah. My mom also picks up, she hasn't done it with all 3 kids yet. They're a lot altogether, but she picks up the boys early from school 1 day a week. Oh. And they just they go run errands or they just hang out or they do whatever with her. And that's really special. They love, my mom's grandma name is Ducky.
Oh, that's nice.
We call this the Ducky days.
Oh, that's so sweet.
She picks them up. It's been great. The transition was a lot easier than I expected. And I have to say, like, Vivian is the world's easiest baby. So we're lucky that way.
Yeah.
That, I was kind of bracing myself, like, what if she doesn't sleep at all? Because you never know what kind of baby you're going to get. But it's been really great. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I love it. I like to ask people about their favorite inspirational quote because I love inspirational quotes. So it'd be great to hear from you what yours is.
If you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one by Dolly Parton. Yeah, I just thought about that. Like I think as lawyers, so many of us get out of law school and there's like one path. Like either you're going to go to government or you're going to go to a big firm. Like it just seems like there aren't that many options. And I think, every step that I took to get, like I couldn't have gotten here without doing all the other stuff.
Yes.
I think it would have been much harder to go out on my own right out of law school. But I don't regret any of that time because I learned so much in all of those other jobs, and all of those jobs have helped me where I am today.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got options as a lawyer. There's
I
more
love
than
that.
one way.
That is such a good quote because I think it's not, if people say, okay, I need to stay where I am, because I've invested all this time in this firm or in this role and I don't want to switch. But if you're not happy, that means you're going to invest even more time into this area and you're not going to be happy. So why not switch now and use the experience that you've built up to then take you on a different path and a different direction. So I think that quote is absolutely awesome.
Yeah. Can you see behind me? I have a what would Dolly do post.
Oh, is that? Oh, wow. You love her that much. I didn't realize that was her.
She's the best.
You guys can't see, so I'll tell you. It's just an awesome poster of Dolly Parton in her office next to her filing cabinet. That's so cool, Autumn.
These are the bonuses of having your own home office.
Yeah, you can put up any random pictures you like. So, Autumn, you mentioned before that you are loving podcasts and that you're going to be starting your own podcast. So, can you tell us about that? And tell me.
Yeah, so I'm launching a podcast in November 14. It's going to launch. So I'm not sure when this episode will be live, but still debating a name. But it's going to be 12 episodes, and it's going to basically walk creative business owners through everything they need to think about or put in place to get their business legally legit. So like putting the right contracts in place, maybe forming an LLC or a corporation, copyrights, trademarks, working with other people, all that good stuff. So I want it to be a really great resource for my, like the resource that I want for my own clients. And, the other lawyers could send their clients there too if they have questions. So
yeah, that sounds awesome. And the great thing about podcasts is that, you can just direct people to it and just say, hey, check out episode number 5. That's really going to help.
I answered that question.
Yeah, I've already done that. So if people want to learn more about you and your firm and what you do, if there's anyone who's thinking, oh, I'd like to learn more about trademark and copyright, or I'd like to connect with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so my website is awbfirm.com, and I love networking with other lawyers, like I said. So if anybody wants to shoot me an email, I love to hop on Skype or a phone call and get to know people. So my email is just info@awbfirm.com.
Okay, cool. I will put a link to both your firm and your email address if you're happy for me to put it in the show notes so people can connect with you.
Perfect. And then on social media, I'm pretty much on Facebook, and that's about it.
Okay.
But I do live videos, and there's all kinds of free content if people are looking to learn more about copyrights and trademarks.
Yeah, I did. I checked out a few of your videos on your website, actually, and I was like, oh, this is so useful, like really informative, really, really useful. So thank you for that.
Good.
It's been awesome hanging out with you today. Thank you so much for your time, and it's been great connecting, and hopefully
thanks for having me.
Great to have you.
I absolutely loved learning about Autumn's journey. It's so interesting to hear about her transition into running her own law firm and switching practice areas. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Autumn mentioned that she's launching her podcast. It's actually coming out today, and she will be sharing really valuable information about setting up your own business and how to make sure that it's set up correctly from a legal perspective. So if you would find that useful, or you have any clients that would find that resource useful, I would definitely suggest that you check out her podcast. The link will be in the show notes to this episode. So if you head over to lightboxcoaching.com/episode 14, then you can get the link to her podcast there. Now, I would love to hear from you what you found the most useful from today's episode. So, I like hearing from my listeners. So drop me a line at janine@lightboxcoaching.com and let me know what you thought. That brings me to the end of today's episode, and I really look forward to connecting with you in the next one. Make sure that you subscribe to the show and that you head over to iTunes to leave a rating and review so that more awesome women just like you can find this show and can join in the conversation. Until next time, take care of you and take care of your babies. The More Than a Lawyer podcast features music from Sound.